Well, hey guys, thank you so much for being here today to talk through about some of the stuff here about Dragon Ball Super. I mean, it's been kind of a long time coming, but now that we're about 26 episodes in on the series, I mean, how's the world treating Super as opposed to, say, Z, for instance, Sean?
People keep asking me, it's funny, people keep asking me, how do you like Super? I think they want to know what my gauge of it is, and I am absolutely in love with it. I think history will remember it, you know, maybe 10, 20, 30 years from now, as probably the best Dragon Ball incarnation of the flavors of Dragon Ball, if you know what I mean, ever. I think it will eventually, because it has, here's why. I can tell you why, because Dragon Ball had elements of story and comedy that were very endearing. I think people forget that Dragon Ball, the original Dragon Ball is a really great series. Dragon Ball Z really brought it to the new level with a lot of fighting, a lot of building up for several weeks to tell who's stronger than the other person, which a lot of fans like, but some newer fans and some newer American audiences were used to a faster pace. So there's several things that they've done with Super that I think improved that. One, they've got enough fighting, so there's a good amount of fun action. There's a bunch of really interesting story, a whole lot more comedy. And last night at dinner, I think the guys from Toei were saying that was actually intentional. They wanted to focus more on the comedy. One of the guys from Toei was telling me that. And that, I think Akira Toriyama said he wanted to focus more on comedy. But the battles are still there, and it moves faster. I think we're becoming a global community of anime watchers, and Japan is taking notice, and from all the success they've had in other countries, such as America. That's why I think it's got everything you would want in a Dragon Ball. You know, new layers of Goku's character, new characters being introduced, such as Jason's character and Whis, etc. So there's so much nugget. I think this will be Akira Toriyama's masterpiece when it's all said and done.
You know, Sean, you're also really set up, I think, Beerus, ultimately. Jason Douglas as the kind of one of the newer members of the family. But now, not only have you participated in 2 movies, but now 26 episodes of the series so far. Right. In a retelling, which is ultimately what the story has been, have you discovered more and learned more about Beerus' character?
Yeah, I think the Beerus that we meet in Battle of Gods is he kind of comes onto the scene. He kind of establishes his mark. He's this kind of force to be reckoned with. And of course, we don't know right off the bat, is he going to be a long-term sort of arch nemesis of our heroes? Is he going to be someone that has to be defeated? And then we as we learn more about him, there are multiple layers of depth that I think now are being really fleshed out in the series. So I think we've had opportunities to explore, even sort of vocally. Well, you know, Beerus doesn't have to be at this level all the time. He has opportunities to come down, and he can be kind of a whiny child in some ways, and I think that expands our kind of conception of what Beerus is, and also the kinds of beings that these sort of demigods are that we call the Destroyers.
Well, what's even interesting to me about Beerus, and I got asked this question on the Battle of Gods tour, was that, you know, they talk about him as an enemy. And what do you think about this new enemy? And I'm like, well, Beerus, I go, well, now that Goku didn't officially beat Beerus in Battle of Gods, the battle in Battle of Gods wasn't about the battle between Goku and Beerus. It was about the battle between Goku and his own ego, is the way I interpreted it. So what I think is interesting about Beerus is that every other enemy has been this malevolent force bent on, but Beerus is kind of a, that Beerus always gonna destroy a planet, but he didn't, but he could. Yeah. He's not a hated evil villain as much as he's just an irrational demigod. And so that's what makes the adversarial relationship interesting, because he's not an evil bastard.
Right.
He just wants what he wants. He's id-driven.
Yeah.
And so that makes, and then the fact that he's training with Whis and you know, if he was an enemy, Beerus would not be even permitting that. Right. So he's a frenemy, I guess? I don't know.
I don't know. I think I've always described him as a force of nature within that universe. And,
that's it.
Just like, you know, a hurricane or a tornado, it's not an enemy force, it's just a thing that we have to deal with and reckon with. And I think that's, you know, Beerus is a hurricane with rationality and irrationality, right? So he is destructive because within the world of Dragon Ball, those universes, you need to have a balance of creation and destruction. And there's a ton of energy associated with those two forces. So
do you feel like he's following a set of kind of unwritten God of Destruction rules? Well, of course, I'm the God of Destruction. It's what I do. You know, like this is how it goes.
Right. I think that's his propensity. Like I don't know that Beerus, for instance, can create anything. Right. I mean, in other words, his power is destruction. He feels most fulfilled when he can destroy something.
Right.
And evidently, if he's not destroying, then he's eating something, right? So that's it's almost like if I can't destroy something, then get me a pizza, please. Order me some of that delicious cheese, and that satiates him for a while. But I suspect that there's this kind of energy that builds up, and he's got to unleash it on something.
Oh yeah.
At some point. Otherwise, there's imbalance, right? But I think the irony and the great fun of watching Beerus is knowing how dangerous he is, and at any moment could level civilizations, and yet can be sidetracked by a cup of delicious pudding for some reason, right? So that creates a tension going forward, I think, for our heroes, but also it expands the universe. It expands the arena of what Dragon Ball can be conceptually.
You know what is kind of occurring to me during this conversation is just how much like paralleling there is between both Goku and Beerus.
In regards to?
Well, in the fact that, you were ultimately talking about how this, he's got this kind of, there's a one-track mind, generally, to a degree.
Yes,
and Goku's very much the exact same way.
I could see, I think you could, I don't know if I would, I don't know how far I would go, but
different sides of the same coin, perhaps.
I think you could absolutely make the case that, so then who would be Goku's Whis in that kind of parallel, right? Is there?
Yeah, is that Vegeta? Is that who? Because there seems to me, sometimes I wonder if Whis is grooming Goku and Vegeta to be the next god of creation and destruction, and that those two guys, they seem like they're being groomed for something. And Beerus has even said, "Are you gunning for my job?"
Right.
So I wonder about that also.
And that raises a question to me, which I don't know the answer to, which is, can Beerus exist as something other than a god of destruction?
Yeah.
Or is this his permanent station in existence, and gunning for my job is just meant ironically, or there is some way that he could be destroyed and replaced? And I think there probably is an answer to that. I just don't pretend to know what it is. Yeah.
So let me ask this. This show, obviously, I mean, from this conversation alone, we can already it almost inspires this kind of conversation. It inspires this kind of guessing. It inspires this kind of... Sean, you've lived with this character, this show now for nearly 20 years.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Jason, you've got a lot of other programs you've worked on that I think have the same type of fan involvement with it. Are there any comparisons you can make between the two fan bases?
Before Dragon Ball, I was certainly aware that there was this intense fan base out there. And I've been involved in other, certainly anime titles that had a very committed, loyal fan base. It was almost like if you were a fan of that certain show, then you were a member of kind of a private club. It almost seems like, the more obscure the title, the more cherished your place in that small club. It's like that one late night cable show that you think no one is watching but you, and it's kind of cool. But with Dragon Ball, there's much more of a worldwide fan community. And of course, I've worked on The Walking Dead, and one of the biggest parts of that show's success, if not the biggest, is the fact that it's got this committed global fan base.
I was just thinking that. That's very similar in that there's this rabid fan base with Walking Dead as well as Dragon Ball.
And it goes beyond just, well, that's one of my favorite shows, and then you go back. For the most loyal fans, it seeps into and it begins to kind of saturate your life. You begin to seek out other communities of fans. You certainly see when you come to conventions, the committed, and they're not just often I love your work. This show is so important to me because, and it's like I was struggling to overcome something in my life. I've heard people say, I was suicidal about some issues in my life, and this show, or I'm recovering from cancer, or my friend is recovering from leukemia. Someone just today was telling me, like, her boyfriend is recovering from leukemia, and the show meant a lot to her in terms of just the inspiration to keep going and to keep fighting.
Jason, what are some of the big differences really between this, and it seems like with voice acting, you'd almost lose a lot of your tools to get to work with.
There's something that happens to me when I'm in the booth, particularly on a long-term show, and you get in that room, right? You shut the door, the lights, you turn the lights down, you've got the screens in front of you. I sometimes can begin to sort of feel an out-of-body experience, like I'm in the show. And I don't know if you've ever feel this way.
I totally know what you're talking about.
And it doesn't typically happen on a show when I'm just dropping in as a character and then I'm done. But on a long-term show where I'm getting to know the character and I'm getting to know the other characters and the plot. So for me, this helps to begin to really ground me in the world of the show. Of course, there's technique, there's proximity to the mic and understanding, how to kind of, if it's a very quiet scene, if it's very internal, there's different ways that we, kind of align ourselves with the instruments in front of us.
Yeah.
But outside of that, while the core, I think, of acting is the same in terms of finding the character, just reacting in the moment in terms of what your character wants, there are some differences. And I think with anime in particular, it compels us to fill the contours of the art that we see in front of us. For me, I generally want to make sure that I'm fulfilling what the animators have created. And with this show in particular, I think they're highly imaginative in terms of how they render these characters and how they draw. And I don't want to miss that. I don't want to miss anything. The other side of that spectrum, being something like on camera, obviously there's a camera over there and it's finding you. But in that case, you're just kind of living in the moment of the character and you're anticipating that the production crew will find you. The sound, the audio, the camera, they have to kind of find you in that world. There are some similarities, but certainly there's some technical differences. And I think the other great thing about working on mic is that it gives me the opportunity to play characters that I would just frankly never have an opportunity
That's my favorite thing about being a voice actor is that I can be anything practically.
Yeah.
And in life I'm just a 5'10" white guy with curly hair.
Right.
But in voice acting land, I can be a monster. I can be a superhero from another planet. I can be a box that talks. Anything. It's great. So.
Yeah.
Sean, you've done a lot of prelay work as well.
Yeah.
And what are some of the big differences between doing prelay versus dub?
I really think that the prelay community, original animation prelay community could learn a bit from the dubbing process. And the only real pet peeve I have is there's a certain amount of freedom that goes along with a prelay show, which I really like. But the big difference for me is I'll be working on a prelay show and they'll want me to do all my, the dialogue's fine. I have a lot more freedom in that way. I do take a little bit of pride and a little bit of enjoyment in working with a dub script and making my emotions, having the restrictions of a limited amount of space in the mouth flap and having a limited amount of space to emote and finding a way within that space to get the same emotion I would have gotten had I got to prelay it and had total freedom by making pitch adjustments, timing adjustments, and still give you the same nugget. I take a certain amount of pride around being able to do that effectively and convince you that I actually prelayed this. I don't know if it's because I started with dubs. As much as I love working on prelay shows, there's another element to prelay shows I like, and that is usually having the whole cast in the room. That's a lot of fun, and that can be very helpful. But there's a certain amount of dubbing that I like where I really get to see what's going on, and it's very clear what I need to do because the animation is very clear on how that's going on, particularly for reactions.
Rarely do you guys ever get to work together. So, I mean, recording these massive battle scenes that...
Oh, it was really weird for me. When I saw, when we did the Battle of Gods picture-in-a-picture video, I had not seen Jason. I'm always curious as to how other people's faces are in the booth. Yeah. And so I'm watching the scene, and then I see Jason, he's got his arms up, and I said, he's doing all this stuff, and I'm like in his face, and I'm like, holy shit, this guy's freaking awesome, right? So when I watch that scene, and I'm watching Goku and Beerus fight, and then I'm watching me and Jason act off each other, I'm like going, even though we're not, we recorded separately, and it was just fascinating to watch. I got an emulation of what it would be like to act with this guy, and in a real scene, looking at him, and I would freaking love it. That's it. That's what I was gonna say.
Well, I have to say, I mean, the fights both at the first part of the series as well as within Battle of Gods is some of the most magnificent stuff.
I think it's the best of ever, and I'm also thrilled about the fact I don't think my other cast members are not this way, but. Because I don't want to throw shade, because I think they're all awesome. But it's interesting to me to hear Jason talk about how he thinks about the character and going, this guy's thinking like, yes, I'm talking to someone who nitpicks the shit. I'm like, yes. It's like, oh, wow, okay, cool. He's definitely really, really thought about this in a way that I can't critique. So, and I'm such a nitpicker, and I care so much about the show, and it's not mine, I don't own it, but I've been involved with it for so long, I'm like, all right, the new guy better not suck. You know, even though it's not my say, it's Chris's say, and I trust Chris, but I'm just like, the new guy better not suck. And not only does he not suck, he's like really thinking about this in a way that I am really happy that you are. And
well,
grateful
thanks,
for.
man.
So,
These guys have, and Sean's been very, very kind in his comments about my work. But I have to say that, you know, for me coming into it, I knew that I was. It dawned on me pretty early on that I was stepping into something that was way bigger than I anticipated that it could be, for whatever reason. Because so many times I get a chance to work on a really great show, but it's a character that comes and goes, and it's a real honor to work on it for a short period of time, and then it goes away. I had no idea where Beerus was going to go. And then when we started getting into Battle of Gods, and it became obvious that this is an important character, at least for a while in the Dragon Ball universe, I did start thinking about it, because I didn't want to sort of be flummoxed, and not just for an interview. I mean, in the booth, I want to have a sense of who this character is, because I think it becomes really important at key moments when it's time for Beerus as a character to have an impact on Goku or Vegeta and make a difference and sort of
who does get Goku's
things,
attention
right?
in a new way? Who does challenge him in a new way? Who can do that? Only a god of destruction, because Goku and Vegeta have risen to such high levels, respectively. And by the way, had you not done that and fans were not aware of it, they would have burned your house down. No, I believe Dragon Ball fans. You just research the character. They're hardcore lovers of the show, also. So.
Yeah.
I think it's just evidence to the fact that Dragon Ball, as a franchise, not only necessarily inspires just its fans, but I mean, really just starting to work on it. Once you get a little Dragon Ball on you, I think you can't help but love it. So.
It's infectious, man.
Right?
Even if you don't want to like it, it's just like you can't help it. You can't escape the Dragon Balls.
Well,
that's the new slogan. You can't escape the Dragon Balls.
We do this because we love to do it. I mean, and I mean, goodness, we have the best job in the world. I mean, we really do, and I mean, we're incredibly grateful to get to do this career and to kind of make a living at it. And so I feel like we owe something back to it a little bit. You know, I feel like, you know, I've been able to have a career as an actor, and I've been able to raise a family. I started out as a stage actor who wanted to work on stage and in film. I thought that by the time I was in my mid-30s, I would be a company member at a regional theater somewhere. And instead, what happened was really cool and different, and I didn't plan on it. But to be able to continue to do something and suddenly find yourself, oh, I'm kind of an anime fan now myself too, right? I've been exposed to so many different series and met so many actors and found out, oh, that's a really great voice actor. Well, oh, and here's all the series he's a part of. So I'm looking things up and I'm going, oh, that's, you know. So it's expanded my sort of vocabulary.
Well, and speaking of being niche, look at it now. We're here at Anime Expo. It seems like it's nearly as big as San Diego Comic-Con. I don't know what the numbers are, but it's massive. I mean, there's a massive, you know, anime is now, it's mainstream now in a lot of ways.
I really want to thank you guys so much for taking time out to just kind of pontificate on Dragon Ball Super.
He's my brother Raditz. We never got to that part. But yes, thank you, Raditz.
Thank you. Kakarot.
Thanks.
Thank you, man.
There you go.